You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign. KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
I am Conor McGregor, multiple weight MMA champion. I'm a fighter and I've been through many battles in the octagon. Many consider my fights in the octagon heroic, but the real life heroes are those men and women who fight to protect us every day. The real life fighters, the real life heroes, are the firefighters and police officers. These first responders are true heroes, because these brave men and women put themselves in the line of danger every single day protecting us all. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation ensures that first responders from fire, EMS and police departments who are killed in the line of duty with young children have a home without the burden of a mortgage. They are my heroes. They need our help today. I'd like to ask you to join me in donating $11 a month to support their efforts. Your $11 a month honours and supports our first responders. Please call now at 1-844-BRAVEST or visit tunneltotowers.org.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop up! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
I know karate, I know jiu-jitsu, I drive like a gangster when I'm coming to see you, see you, see you, see you.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the inaugural episode of Going Mental with John Katz and Rick Robinson. I'm one half of the crew, Mr. Rick Robinson. He's the other half, Mr. John Katz. And we're going to spend most of this hour probably telling you guys why we started down this rabbit hole in the first place, which is why this one's called Down the Rabbit Hole. Because I don't know how John got on this journey, but I can explain to you how I did here in just a minute. But first, we're going to kick things over to him so he can tell you guys a little bit about himself for those of you that may not have heard him on here before. He is a recurring contributor here. He usually helps out with our holiday specials, and he's done some panels with us, and now we've roped him in semi-permanently. Wahaha. This is how I roll. Good evening, sir. How are you?
How we doing? How's everything?
Doing all right. All right, so I know
excited to do it.
I know, yeah, me too. This is actually something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I know we had talked about kind of on the first episode, me kind of giving my little personal testimony about how I got here and what started my journey down the rabbit hole of mental health, especially for me, more like the men's mental health journey. But we're actually going to be doing kind of a full, male, female, all of society, all the craziness, and just kind of take it apart, put it back together. So I just figured we'd take a few minutes to let everybody kind of get to know us a little bit and then go from there.
Yeah. We don't want to exclude the lady of mental health problems too. No, for sure. Yeah, talking. I know you through your share of some tough stuff, share of shit for sure, and more of a stigma around the men's mental health. Definitely something men have a much more difficult time dealing with and talking about. And topic, and I think there's just so much bullshit with the whole red pill claim alpha community and all these guys manly advice. I feel like these types of combos are perfect.
Well, I mean, so let's start there, and I'm not exactly sure if there might not be something going on your end, because all of a sudden you're kind of cutting out on me, and you weren't a moment ago. It's not terrible, but you're kind of fading in and out. But let's kind of start there, because that actually is one of the things that I started looking into, because the thing that drove me crazy. All right, so let me just kind of start from the beginning. I was married and had been since 2003. And we were together since 1998. So we were together for a very long time. And then COVID hit, and then all of a sudden everything just started getting really weird. And then the next thing I know, by the end of 2020, she was gone. She just, I'm sitting here and I'm doing radio, kind of like I'm doing right now. And I didn't know this, but she was having my oldest son, who was still in the house, pack up shit and put it in the car. She left on a Thursday and never came back. She told me she was going to go to some pool tournament or something for New Year's Eve. And I'm like, so we're spending New Year's Eve apart? And she's like, well, there's bad weather and I'm just going to stay the night at mom's and blah, 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 blah. And then so she never came home on the 1st. And then finally on the 2nd, she calls me, the woman that I had been married to for 18 years nearly, and together with for 23, basically broke up with me over the phone. I never saw her in person again until she handed me divorce papers that were already executed that I needed to sign so she could go file them. And that was like 5 months later. But there's a whole side to this story that nobody knows, because I already knew. When I figured out that she was gone for the entire New Year's weekend, I knew she wasn't coming back, even before she ever called me on the phone. So I had it all planned out, because my 2 middle kids that do still live with me, that are special needs, were going to be at their sister's. My newest grandchild was also going to be at their older sister's, and my son was supposed to be at a party with his new fiance, or his new girlfriend, who's now his wife. That was New Year's Eve, 2020. I had already figured it out. I picked out the gun I was going to do it with. I knew where I was going to do it, and I was going to go do it. I was done. I don't know. You can attribute it to fate, higher power, whatever you believe in. But something made my youngest son stay home. He still doesn't know this, but he saved my life. Because I wouldn't do it with him in the house. Because what I was going to do, because I live on 2 acres and there's like 40 acres behind me, I was just going to go out in the woods and blow my head off and just, everybody would just think I disappeared. Kids would come home a few days later and be like, where's Dad? Because I just didn't care. And that's what started me down this rabbit hole, because I realized that looking back at it now, I understand how selfish that moment was. I didn't then, but I do now. Because nothing else mattered in that moment but how much I hurt. And the scariest part about it was, for me, is I kept thinking, well, this will show her. And the worst thing about it is, with how she treated me, she probably wouldn't even have cared. I was about to end my life over somebody who basically threw me away. And this is what started my journey into trying to figure out how to be less of a nut bar. Because for a long time I was. Not even going to try to lie about it. I was going to therapy, I was doing all the things I was supposed to do, and I still felt broken inside. I mean, it got to the point where my therapist was like, you should be journaling, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Nothing was working, so I just started posting on social media, and then everybody's like, what's going on with you? Why are you posting all the weird shit on social media? I'm like, because I'm having a fucking nervous breakdown. Let me have it in peace. So that was then it kind of turned into, I've done a few short videos on TikTok and everything else. And I was just like, I feel like this is something that really needs to be talked about. And then I realized that there were other people trying to do it too, and they were trying to do it the right way. Not these pretend alpha males like the Tape Bros and everybody else. Look, I'm just going to be honest. If you have to tell the world you're an alpha, you're not one. You might qualify as a sigma. You're definitely not an alpha. Alphas don't have alphas don't have to tell, they show.
Yeah, and self-proclaiming anything fairly genuine. Are you able to hear me better?
It's still actually. Hang on, let me see if we get you any better on Skype, because I don't know if it may be something going on with this connection. So, hang on, because I can actually call you over there and we'll see if it clears it up.
They said they can hear me.
Okay, I mean
in the chat.
Okay, as long as they can hear you, I'll figure it out. I can hear you well enough.
I don't know. Able to hear me? I want to make. I don't know. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. I know that's probably not. I think a lot of people have probably don't talk about it, and you were just saying it made you want to speak about these things and articulate, and I think that's other people that hear it, and for you.
Well, I mean, yeah, and
that's why.
Oh, sorry.
With this, no, I was just gonna say with the stigma of the men's mental health, people just misinterpret what stoicism really is, and that type of stuff. The idea that it's not manly to things or be in touch with those kind of things. And I think it's through people that, complain and feel sorry versus actually having connection and being able to process what you're really feeling. And so I know even just from my pod of saying things out loud and that opening up, that alone, and even with therapy, there is a lot that therapy doesn't work the same with men. Solutions, right? They don't want to just kind of sit in there over and over. And we are much more like we just kind of want to fix, like give me a tool. But I could tell you even from that initial venting process, being able to say to another intelligent adult or said to anyone before, that in the biggest. And I don't, sex aside, everything could benefit from that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and for me that was kind of the thing, because that was kind of what I started running into. I had people that were pissed off at me because of what I was posting on social media, and they're like, men aren't supposed to talk about things like this. Men aren't supposed to do that. Men aren't supposed to do that. And I'm like, who the hell decided that? Because I will tell you, for me and what I have discovered, as far as my personal journey, there is a difference between being a completely unhinged man who can't control your emotions and being somebody who's at least comfortable enough to figure out how to give yourself a venting valve of some kind, because we need that. And that was something else that I was coming to terms with coming out of this long-term relationship that was much worse than I thought ever possible, because I didn't realize how much I had shut down and started being numb until it got to the point where we weren't fighting all the time anymore and we were starting to do things together again. I didn't know that the reason we weren't fighting anymore was because she was done fighting. She had already started planning her escape. So I'm thinking things are great. We're like taking our first couple of vacations together. We're hanging out all the time. And the only reason all this is happening is because she's keeping me placated while she's planning her escape. So I never even saw it coming.
Women like to line that up in advance. Women just leave more have they usually decided it well. Trigger, they've got it all sorted out for sure.
And yeah, and that was something that I was having to come to terms with, because here I am thinking, things were, for the first time in forever, we weren't arguing all the time. We were doing things together again. It seemed like we were having fun. And it's all because she had already picked out her next victim and was halfway out the door. So that was another thing for me that just threw me for a loop, because I'm like, I've spent my entire adult life with this person, figuring out what it took to make them happy, to try to build a life with them, just to have them turn around and tell me that everything that I thought I understood was a lie. And that was what really threw me for a loop. And then I started trying to deal with it, and everybody was like, you're not supposed to talk about these kind of things. You have to hold it in. You have to do this. You have to do that. Right. No, this needs to change.
Right. I mean, that's why men actually do commit higher rape, because they're holding it all in, and commit suicide less is because they're to let shit out. It not even, but women are much more willing to their crazy shit and cry to their best friend or their therapist, and men, you saw a dude, just sit down and with their mom or their sibling or something. It's due. And not that we should be like and all that kind of stuff, but you could see where they're not building up that steam. They're not building up that pressure. And again, I generalize everybody, so it flies. But yeah, women are much more inclined to just a couple things about if I've come to learn anything, this is all that, it's that based so much around other people's behavior and how other people feel about us, and that stuff really is responsible for of people's woes. If you really break down eating at people, it's almost always to some extent, almost nothing is in them. And what I really, it's it doesn't matter if it's house, our parent, somebody we've known our whole life. That's their journey and their demons, for lack. Take that stuff on, and we give it so much our own self-worth, and point where we don't even want to live anymore. And we really have to get construct of that. We need ourselves. It's us. We're born through. Everything's fleeting. Everyone dies, will be gone someday. In 100 years, everything in this one I know will be gone. It'll all purposed and belong to other people, and we can't it's all fleeting. And we form, and then we base our value and self-worth on. And yeah, love is not attachment. Love is not holding on to things. It's and letting things go and loving for the love, not for love. And that's trying to figure that part out.
Well, yeah, no, and like I said, for me, one of the things that was the hardest for me to understand was the difference in how men and women love, because this was one of the things that completely broke me. I did everything that society told me that I was supposed to do as a man. I was the one out working all the time. I was the one making sure that we had the nicer new car. I was the one making sure that we had a nice house. I was literally killing myself to give her everything that I thought she wanted. And these were the things that she was telling me that she wanted. And then at one point she just looks at me and says, all that is stuff. She says, you spend all your time working, you spend all your time doing this. And I'm like, and you have your hobbies too. And then we do things together. I thought that was what made us work, is I went off and did my thing, you went off and did your thing, and then we came together and did different things. And I thought that's what made us work, because that's what you used to tell everybody. So where is this coming from? And it was just in one moment, the mask came off, And she literally told me that every moment that she spent with me, she was pretending. That she wanted a father for her oldest son because she knew that I was a good father, and that was the only reason she was here. And now that the kids were grown, she was going to go find herself, and I could be damned. And I'm like, so I've spent my entire adult life doing everything that I thought I was supposed to do, genuinely loving you, not doing it very well in the beginning. I'm not going to make any bones about that. We're all young, we're all stupid, we do stupid things. But eventually I grew up, and I started doing everything the right way. And I thought we got past all of that. And then it turns out we didn't. And that's what she used against me every single time we argued. And that's the other thing that drives me crazy. While we're talking about mental health, women, if you're listening to me, stop keeping scorecards. Men try not to do that. Because there's no point. Because once we talk something through, we consider it done. You guys hold on to things for forever. I remember every freaking argument with her. It was like, well, you did this to me in 1995. And I'm like, I knew you for 5 minutes. Like, literally, for 5 minutes. And you're still, that's just, that is not good for mental health. So if we do have any women listening tonight, stop keeping scorecards. Now, if your partner starts doing it, then they bring it on themselves. But if your partner's not throwing every little indiscretion or every little stupid thing you've ever done back in your face, then don't do it to them. Because the other thing that drives me crazy while we're on the subject is if you are in a long-term relationship and you're arguing with one another, you need to remember whatever you're arguing about is supposed to be the problem, not your partner. Because that's another thing that absolutely drove me crazy about the entire time we were married. Because anytime she wanted to come to me with anything, it made me the bad guy. And I'm just like, I don't know how to do this because I'm wrong and I don't even know what I did. It's just communication. That's key number one for mental health. Whether it's you talking to somebody else, preferably a mental health professional, do not go to somebody that you consider a friend and start telling them how bad your significant other is, especially if they're single, because they're just going to put stupid ideas in your head and then you're going to feel stuck. Trust me. Just saying.
So much of what you said, if not all of that. Yes, women in general. Here's the thing, and I don't even know but I would guess that she ought you a lot at some point, but. It's like change. Once they start shading it in a different good to bad. You did and do is shit. It's like you didn't do is great. You know what I mean? Just kind of very black and white. And once they see you as the fucking bad guy, and there is nothing against the wall trying to figure out what you're doing wrong, the bad's going to just outshade the good. But that it comes back to what I was saying. Man, we really don't anyone even one know ourselves. And listen, I pride myself on being understand people and know people, but it's, you don't know their psyche, their perception of the world stuff. Listen, they can't even understand. We spend our whole lives trying to understand souls and the stuff that we've got, our kids, and what makes us tick, and our fears and motivation, trying to figure it out about ourselves. We'll never 24/7 in their own brains. And like, how much, let's say it's your wife, how much do you even in a 24-hour span? Even with your spouse and talk a lot, you added it all up, your conversation, that would be a ton, right? You don't know. Everybody's got their own. You'll drive yourself fucking crazy why people do what they do. How possibly see it this way? How can they possibly think that differently? I see it this way, and then you'll beat your head against see it what you feel is the most logical way in their mind. they're thinking the same thing. You got it's like at some point you look and go, I'll never figure it out. It doesn't matter. That person's, it's not for me to carry why their behavior is their behavior. Behavioral burden. They're back. And then hopefully, work sometimes and we have joy and all. But again, all love is temporary. Right? We're not anything.
Well, I mean, actually, you bring up a great point. You do bring
that.
up.
I feel like that's where the.
Sorry, you kind of cut out there for a second.
No.
But you do bring up a great point because love is temporary. But the other thing that I think we really need to talk about, since we've started down this particular part of the rabbit hole, is love is different than what society is telling us love is, especially today. The love that everybody's chasing today is the infatuation feeling, the butterflies, the tingles, all those things. That's not love. Love is not actually supposed to be an emotion. We consider it an emotion, but love is actually an action. Love is actually a verb. Love is a decision. You have to redecide every single day if this is the person that you love. And at some point, they may decide that they don't. And I don't have an issue with that. If you decide that I'm not the person you love anymore, just don't wait 5 years to tell me. That's my thing.
I don't necessarily why that it's relationships are actions, right? To make, you obviously have to do stuff, but I don't think that's necessarily. Maybe it can be, but I don't act. And I, by the way, either. I don't think you can define. I think it's actually an effable thing. People, if you look it up and it says, I actually saw a video recently. They were on a college going around talking to kids. They asked, and they said, I don't. People really like each other. It's like, to define it, you can't. I think it's foundational to our. I kind of think everything is built on. To feel, and I don't even think a lot of people choose to stop. Right? In fact, I think most people would prefer. They just fall out of love, and it's like it's still in love. But a lot goes into maintaining a relationship. For sure, you could love somebody, you can't be together because, and everything else that comes into play, and dirty and shitty, and so the love isn't, so the love and relationships. But I don't know perceptions.
No, I mean, you may have a point. All right, so I think we're going to go and take a break because I haven't heard anything much from any, but I was just live monitoring and you are kind of cutting out. So let's see, we're going to take a break and see if we can get that cleared up a bit. We'll be right back here in just a second. You are listening to Going Mental. Hang on, I got to shut this down now because now it's getting loud. All right, so we are going to take a quick break. You're listening to Going Mental with John Katz and Rick Robinson. We seem to be having gremlins, which usually for some reason happens on our inaugural shows every single time. I don't know why, even with a new setup. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You guys are listening to us live on KLR Radio. We still got more to talk about. Hopefully we can get things squared away while we're on commercials, so stay tuned. For those of you hanging out on the streams, you're going to get some behind-the-scenes stuff. For those of you on KLR Radio, it'll sound normal to you.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign. KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
I am Conor McGregor, multiple weight MMA champion. I'm a fighter and I've been through many battles in the octagon. Many consider my fights in the octagon heroic, but the real life heroes are those men and women who fight to protect us every day. The real life fighters, the real life heroes, are the firefighters and police officers. These first responders are true heroes because these brave men and women put themselves in the line of danger every single day protecting us all. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation ensures that first responders from fire, EMS and police departments who are killed in the line of duty with young children have a home without the burden of a mortgage. They are my heroes. They need our help today. I'd like to ask you to join me in donating $11 a month to support their efforts. Your $11 a month honours and supports our first responders. Please call now at 1-844-BRAVEST or visit tunneltotowers.org.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop up! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
I know karate, I know jiu-jitsu, I drive like a gangster when I'm coming to see you, see you, see you, see you.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
And welcome back into the inaugural episode of Going Mental with John Katz and Rick Robinson. And I think we vanquished the gremlins while we were on break. So we've done some tinkering behind the scenes, and I can hear him now, which means you should be able to hear him much better now. So where were we before we had to...
Could people really not hear me, or it was just like some words were cutting out?
No, I mean, it was, I mean, we could hear you, but it literally sounded like a helicopter. It was like...
Okay, but
yeah.
But people were able to grasp what I was saying?
Yeah, I mean, I was able to get the gist of it well enough to keep up with you. It just was not coming through as clear as it is now, and I wish I knew why, but I'm glad we figured it out.
All right. Well, we're back.
We're back.
Yeah, something I wanted to mention you were talking about before, with people saying it's not mad, like when you were getting on Twitter and talking about your stuff and people conflating masculinity with being in touch for discussing our feelings. I always look at it like this. And again, not the wallowing and the self-pity, that's different, and the being emotionally erratic or whatever, but what's harder, right? Because if people want to judge masculinity on strength and what's more difficult to do and what requires more strength and courage, just think about it that way. You were talking about being numb. It's way fucking easier to just numb out than it is to actually open up to somebody in a meaningful way. So I always look at it like that. How could you call it weak to do when it takes way more courage and strength? The reason that men don't like doing that is because of how uncomfortable it is. It's much easier to just sit there and suck it up and numb out and, come home and have some drinks or smoke a lot of weed or take some pills and sleep a lot and just kind of go through the motions numbed out. Petrifying to a lot of people to sit down and open up about stuff they might have been holding in since they were a tiny kid. So I would say that's a very courageous thing to do for a lot of people.
Well, and that was my thing too, right? And I didn't actually do it much on Twitter. I did it more on my because and this is everybody pretty much knows this, but I'm going to go ahead and say this now. Rick Robinson is not my given name. Rick Robinson was a character that got created because I started my social media political commentary career as a penguin in a Gadsden flag T-shirt, and eventually I was like, you know what? I don't really want to spend my entire life on social media as a cartoon character, but I can't use my real name because I've been told if I do, I'm going to get fired. So Rick Robinson was born. Actually, he started life as Double R, and then eventually it turned into Rick Robinson because I was like, yeah, it still didn't feel right either. So I have a professional Facebook page and I have a personal Facebook page. So I was venting a lot on my personal Facebook page, and I do have a commingling of people that I have over the years connected with on the radio side that eventually, I gave my real name to, and they're like, can we connect with you on your regular Facebook? And I'm like, sure. And those were the ones that were like, you can't do these kind of things. And these women that are responding to these things the way that they are, it's because they see you as weak and they do this and they do that. And I was like, look, I don't really care what anybody else thinks. This is what is keeping me just the tiniest bit of sane that I am right now. Because my entire life, my entire touchstone was gone. This is the biggest difference, I think, between men and women. When we fall in love, it's permanent. Men do not want to leave. We will do everything we can to not leave. Women are not necessarily the same way. And I'm not saying that in a negative way for all the women out there like, oh my God, he's trash talking us again. No, I'm not. I'm telling you that we're different. The difference.
No, it's true. I pointed out all to look at. Men are more nostalgic. Men are more romantic. Guys will call their high school girlfriend. Guys will message their high school girlfriend 20 years later, in a bout of late night drunken nostalgia. Women aren't like that. You're right. Once a guy loves a girl, even if he loved her 20, even if they broke up 20, he's always got a love there.
Yeah, I mean,
in a different
there's something
I agree
there.
with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's something there because when we fall in love, each time it's different. So there's just something that remains, and it's funny that you mentioned that because when I was going through my divorce and I was posting some of the things that I was posting on social media, a girl that I had a total crush on in 8th grade messaged me out of the blue, and we started talking for a few months, and I realized that she was married, and I'm like, no, we can't do this anymore. I said, first of all, once I found out you were married, you said your husband was okay with it. He's not, so no. But it was just one of those things where I was like, yeah, I mean, we're talking 8th grade shit. That was that was forever ago. I just turned 51, for those of you who don't know. So that's how long ago it was.
Dudes are wired that way, and it's a yeah. I've tried to figure that out a lot. Women are not loving based on the same. I don't even want to say it's a possessive thing, but it seems to play a role in it, which is once we really do kind of open our heart to somebody and feel that kind of thing, it's we feel like it just kind of belongs to us in a way. I think.
Well, I mean,
it's like it's always kind of ours, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is the differences, and I don't necessarily want to say that women aren't loving and women aren't nurturing. They are so in a different way. Because for men, when we love, we're protective. We want to make sure that they're okay, that they're provided for, that they're taken care of. That's ingrained in us. That is what we are supposed to do.
Women are basing it more on how you make them feel, and I think they might still love you, but they're much more willing to switch it up for sure.
I mean,
And that's why women do. They are, look, if you just look statistically, they are the ones to end most marriages. And women will say, well, the guys kind of forced their hand, like they want out, and they just, but yeah, men are much more willing to sit in even a shitty situation. A guy is much more willing to kind of ride out a shitty situation because he goes, hey, it's the bet I made. Things could be worse, you know.
And I don't want to start over. But it's interesting that you bring that up, because there's a statistic that is the same whether it is hetero marriage or lesbian marriage. 70% of women initiate divorce.
Right. Well, that's what I mean.
In both groups. So men are not the problem. Just throwing that out there.
Well,
not always anyway.
I think it's the two things. It's the permanent kind of love, but it is just kind of that willingness to, it's like, hey, I committed to this situation. It might be shitty. There might be issues, but I'm not going to blow up my whole life and just go chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Yeah, we're just, look, even in a microcosm kind of way, men are just generally much more consistent creatures. If you just took it even from a week to week or a month to month, women are all over the fucking place. You could get one version in the morning and another one at night, and then 2 weeks later it's something else. Guys are a little more even keel. They just kind of settle into it, and like I said, even when it's bad, we just kind of settle in and go, okay, I'll make the best of this shitty thing and I'll ride it out.
Well, so I think part of the reason why why we are typically more even keeled is because society has made us that way. I mean, I don't know how many people we have listening right now, but if you could raise your hand, how many of you have had to hold the flashlight for your dad when he was working on shit?
I think a lot of it's biological and hormonal, to be honest. You know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is definitely there.
We're not having these cycles of spiking different chemicals in our body. You know what I mean? Like, that's might sound like the most chauvinistic thing to say. I don't mean it like that at all. It's a real thing. There's a lot happening in there that isn't happening in us. We kind of maintain the same levels of hormones, and they gradually change as we get older. We're not going through these dynamic cycles back and forth, week to week.
I think guys do have their own version of a hormonal cycle. I just don't think it's as bad.
We do. They say, like, we spike our test every 7 days. We spike this. Who the fuck knows? But still, it's not affecting us in the same way. It might just make us a little more energetic or something.
Well, I mean, you know, we also now live in a society where they now recently did a TV episode where they accused racism of creating cancer. So, you know, I mean, if this is the new normal, I kind of went off. But
let me ask you this about your situation,
sure,
because it might be helpful. What shifted for you? I know your son was home that night, and that's what prevented you. But what shifted for you from going from wanting to do that to not wanting to, and how you know, what was the change in perception there?
Well, so, I mean, this is going to sound kind of weird, and it may seem like a bit of a cop-out. Maybe it means that I really, maybe if I was left by myself, I might have still talked myself out of it. I don't know. But I do know that I didn't want him hearing the gunshot because he was in the house. I was just like, I don't want to do that to him. It was mentally different for me if they were gone, because then out of sight, out of mind. But knowing that he was in his room, knowing that he would have heard me go outside, knowing that a few minutes later he would have heard a gunshot even in the distance, and then eventually got up and started trying to figure out where I was, I couldn't put him through that. For some reason, I was okay with the idea if it was going to happen maybe a day or so later. But when I realized he was going to be there, I was just like, I'm going to take this as a sign. And I'm glad I did, because, I mean... But then
what was different a week later?
Well, part of it,
a month later.
Well, I mean, part of it was actually, I mean, I had started snapping out of it like a day or so later, because once I realized she wasn't coming back, I have people that depend on me. I have two children from my first marriage that both have special needs for different reasons. My first wife was not the best caregiver, And I, again, worked all the time. So my children had malnutrition issues when they were younger, and I didn't figure it out until DHS started coming around. So we cleaned everything up and got it fixed for a while. And then she started doing what she was doing before. So eventually I was like, look, I'm not losing my kids. So I left. And that was when, and by then, the person who became my second wife was already a friend of mine. And we hung out for a long time before we did anything. And then eventually we just felt like we clicked, and at least as far as I knew, and then the rest is history. But so once I realized that she wasn't coming back, and I realized that if I did this, that means other people would have to take care of the kids and everything else. I was just like, I can't do it. I don't know. I can't really tell you exactly what shifted. I just know that between the moment when I really, really, really wanted to do it and realized that I wasn't going to be able to get my son out of the house, and then by the time I came to my senses, I just there was some sort of a switch that flipped.
Yeah, and you always hear that, most people don't do it because of how it will affect other people. And yeah, if there was no one else around, I think that those are the people that are most prone, where they feel like they don't have anyone. Not only don't they have anyone that they can rely on, they don't have any, like you said, they don't have anyone relying on them. And that's a scary one, because you go, well, shit, no one's going to care. Right.
And that was honestly kind of how I felt in that moment. And then I realized how wrong I was, though, because I do still have, counting bonus kids and biological kids and kids that call me dad, I have like 9 kids.
That's amazing. Yeah,
So-
that stuff. Listen, I don't have kids, so I have no idea what it feels like to have a child relying on you, and special needs on top of that. I cannot imagine. But yeah, like that's all that. It's like when it comes to other adults, man, shit. Like I'm saying, even your wife, it's like their shit is not our shit. We just are choosing to cohabitate right now, right? Or we're in love right now, or whatever it is. But it's like their journey's not our journey. We don't truly know people on that level. I can't imagine. Listen, I know she says that she never felt a certain way. I think that's bullshit. I think she shades it that way, and I think that's her cope to deal with her own shit. But yeah, listen, especially when you get together young. When I think about what I was like at 20 and stuff like that, you don't know, and you don't know yourself. You don't know what you need and want in life. You have no idea about anything, and it's such a scary, for guys especially at that age, it's kind of a scary feeling. You're just kind of untethered, and you got to just kind of figure shit out, and you grab onto something. And yeah, the idea that you're gonna grow alongside a person from that young of an age until you're old, it's very rare. I mean, if you think about it this way, look at the couples. Everyone says, okay, 50-60% of marriages end in divorce, right? So now you've got 40%. How many of these couples got together young, stay together till they die, and are happy together or happily married? It's very fucking rare, where neither person cheated. They never had, severe issues and separations or whatever. Nobody's unfaithful. They stay together forever and they're happy. It's like, what, 10%, if I had to guess, right?
Yeah, I would probably say it is pretty close to 10%.
So like 90% of people don't get that. So we have this expectation that we're supposed to have that, and then if we don't, we're devastated. But it's like, it's the rare exception. It really is. And yeah, we can't hold on. We don't get to keep anything. It's my main tip. We can't sit there and think about the past. We can't obsess about the future. We have to live in this fucking moment. It's always the present moment. Time is not real. We're in this moment, and nothing belongs to us. If we can go outside and sit in the grass, I sound like a hippie. I say this all the time. If you can eat a sandwich and sit in the grass and look at the sky and sleep in a bed and have a roof over your head, that's all there is. That's all That's all you need. Everything else is gravy. All relationships, it's all a bonus. We get those fleeting moments of joy. God willing, we get to experience those moments of joy. There is no sustained state of happiness. There is no, I get to have this thing and now everything's great. If only I have this thing, well, now I have it. No. People think that they're miserable. They get the thing, 6 months later, they're the same fucking person. There is no next thing and then I'll be happy. We have to strip it all away, be happy with ourselves, between us and the universe, and then the other stuff's not going to affect us as much, because even when it all goes away, we're fine. We're fine without it. It's just a bonus. And so it doesn't devastate us. We're not basing our happiness on possessing things and being attached to things and controlling things and having these codependent relationships where we're defining our worth based on how somebody else feels about us. Think about how insane that is. We're the same person.
No, and you're exactly right. And that actually was going to be the next thing that I was going to bring up as kind of as we start moving towards the close of the show, is the one thing that I will say after basically deconstructing everything that made me who I thought I was and starting to put things back together. And this is something else. Sometimes when you face the kind of trauma that I've been through, you make really big changes. And sometimes you kind of feel like you have to, because I realized, because I shuttered an entire company in 2009, because when Barack Obama got elected, everything just started slowly going to crap, and it started affecting my business, and my kids needed a roof, and my kids needed food. So I shuttered an entire business, tried to go to work for somebody else in the same field. It didn't work out. So I changed my entire life. I started doing call center work, and eventually started doing management work in call centers. And I worked for Convergys and Southwest Airlines, and eventually University of Oklahoma, which is another reason why I have a stage name, as they call it, because every single one of them said, if we find out you're posting on social media and stuff about politics, you're going to get fired. So it's like, fine, you won't know. But that's a topic for another show. But that's what started all of this for me. It was this was my first experience with needing an outlet, because I didn't know how to be me anymore when my business was gone. And I honestly thought I was going to hate the kind of work that I was doing. Turns out I was pretty good at it. I still didn't like it very much, but I was pretty good at it, and I usually got promotions and I got raises and things were okay. So I made do. But then when she was gone, I kept going into this, even when we were working from home for University of Oklahoma, when we were working from home, and they told us it was a job that we were never going to be able to do from home. And then COVID hit, and then all of a sudden we were able to do it from home. Even just rolling into my little office that I have here that is now my studio every day and working for them from 8:30 to 5 every day was killing me on the inside, because I was like, the only reason I took this job isn't here anymore.
Right.
And it was killing me. So I took early retirement, and I have spent the last 8-9 months diving into doing this full time and figuring out how to monetize every single bit of it that I can, just hoping that just lightning strikes just once and then it won't matter anymore. But, sometimes you have to make changes. When you find yourself feeling stuck, or you feel like you're in a trauma moment and you can't get out of it, just start looking at little things that you can do to make changes. For me, one of the first things I started doing was I started establishing a routine again. Even if it was just something as simple as getting up and making my bed every day. Because once I did that, I felt like I could do something else. And there may be days that you can't do that. That's okay. If there's a day that you can't do anything but sit in bed and do whatever you have to do to cope, then take that day if you can. If not, take 5 minutes when you can. If you're feeling like you're depressed, because I was for a very long time, remember, showers are your friend. I don't know why it works, but it works. Just go get whatever temperature of water.
Showers always been a therapy thing for me. Whether it's anxiety even or anything, a shower is a huge resetter. It always has been since I was a kid.
I mean, and it pretty much is for everybody. Just set the water temperature at whatever temperature it is that you prefer, and just go stand under it for a minute. And I mean,
you know why? Because it's almost a meditative thing. You're stripping all the noise away, and it's just you and the fucking water. And yeah, that's the thing. I can tell you with my friends and family and hearing you talk and everyone, it's always based around other people and relationships, and it's such a hard fucking thing to reconcile. And like you said, you started doing stuff, you realized, oh, I was doing this for her, I was doing this because of her or whatever. And not that people shouldn't sacrifice in relationships, I've probably not done enough of that, but we still act and do things based on what we think other people want and need and perceive, and their behavior and all these kind of things. And it's just so strange that we do that. And we got to look in ourselves and what do I need? What do I really? And we, by the way, we wall that stuff up and we tuck it away when we're kids, and we form these false beliefs about ourselves, and we form our worldview based on those beliefs, and we think it's real, and we go through our whole lives kind of doing this thing that we think we're expected to be or do or say or act, and then we're tying it all into our relationships and how this person feels about me and their approval and their validation, and then they do something and we're so hurt and devastated by it. Like, how could they do that? Why did they do that? And yeah, it's just you in the fucking shower. That's all it is. That's all life is. It's you in the shower. Really. I was talking about sitting in the grass. It's so true. I say it to people. I go, you could just go sit in that bush right now. Go sit in the grass. Go stare at that tree for an hour. That's life. Just being here is enough. And we can't let the ups and downs and the pain and everyone's going to go through it. Everyone's going to have people die on them. Everyone's going to lose everyone they ever knew. We're all going to lose jobs and not get the thing we wanted. It's like, if we let that stuff devastate us, then we'll always be in a state of conflict. We'll always be upset.
Well, and this goes back to something that you had brought up a moment ago. At the end of the day, you have to learn how to be happy first. And I would strongly recommend, for those of you that may be listening that maybe haven't started like doing the whole serious relationship thing yet, or maybe you're younger and you're starting to think about it, figure out what makes you happy first. Because and this is coming from somebody who did this and has done this multiple times, and this is one reason why up until recently I had been single for almost 4 years, because this is the longest I had ever been single since I started dating. I started dating when I was 16. I went from one long-term relationship to another. My first fiance and I started dating when I was 16. We broke up when I was in college. She moved back to California. Come to find out, she ran off to California because she was pregnant. She didn't want me to know. She came back 10 years later, and I found out I had a kid. By then, I was already divorced from wife number one, living with girlfriend number two, who eventually became wife number two, who was pissed off that I had a kid that she didn't know about. And I'm like, well, I didn't know either. So, and then...
Yeah, like, it's my pin. Life is messy. That's the thing. It's so fucking messy. And, you have to just kind of surrender to that. And it's not a giving up at all. And it's not a just, I was talking to someone recently and they were saying, well, life doesn't just happen to you. We can control it and all that stuff. And that is true, but we cannot control other people. And that's where the messiness comes in. Because again, like you said, this woman's running off. She's having a kid with somebody else. The other one's doing this other fucking thing. The other one left after. It's like, that we don't have control over. We can control our own self and our own reactions. And when it comes to, I hate the word even, manifesting things into our lives, yes, but that does not include maneuvering other people around. And you'll go crazy. You'll go crazy if you try.
No, exactly. And as we wrap up here, I do want to say, when at least for me, when he uses the word manifestation, he's not looking at you, Joel Osteen. That's not what we're talking about. I just want to make sure
that we could talk about manifestation. I think it is a thing. It's just not the way people think it is a thing. And I think it's just already what everybody does. We just don't realize we're doing it, and it's not some magical. Thing to it.
There's a spiritual metaphysical connection to it. And it is a thing. I mean,
maybe. Listen, I'm as woo-woo as anyone with the vibrations and the energy and all that. But even without that part, yes, everything starts as a thought. It's just as simple as that, right? The stuff you believe about yourself and the stuff you think about yourself, of course that's going to manifest into life. Of course it is. That's just the way it is. If I'm sitting around sad and depressed and ruminating about some shit that happened 5 years ago, and I'm laying in bed all day and I'm drinking and eating shitty and so on, of course that's going to manifest. Now, if I'm choosing to think about positive things and eating healthy and getting up early, it's like, well, that's going to manifest differently too. And that all begins as a thought and a decision. And those are things I do have control over. But hey, look, still, then I could fall in love with some amazing chick. And 2 years later, she could be pregnant with some other dude and run out. It's like, well, I didn't manifest her to fucking do that. She's on her, you know what I mean? She manifested that because that's her shit. That's her journey. It's like, then I still can't even let it affect me. It still has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I will say that is one level of Zen I haven't mastered yet. I am working on that because I have kind of come to the
sure as shit have not mastered it, but at least it being the goal is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I have kind of come to terms with the fact that I can only really control what I can control, and the biggest thing that I can control is my reaction to the things that life throws at me. So, and that has been a learning process for me for the last few years, because I am a lot more Zen than I used to be for the most part, because otherwise I would probably still be screaming and yelling and ranting and raving, which don't get me wrong, on certain shows I still do, but you know.
What's that?
I said, don't get me wrong, on certain shows I still do scream and yell and rant and rave, but not as much as I used to.
Yeah, it comes down to kind of I've always been pretty good at just kind of accepting people for who they are. And I never really even articulated it in my own mind that well till I was older. Just kind of the part about that you can't change people. People are going to be who they're going to be, who they're going to fucking be. And yeah, I mean, to this day, you know, my mom will call me and text me novels about what her sister's doing and what my sister's doing. And I'm like, are you so concerned with other people? All your problems are based around why is someone else doing something? Who gives a fuck why they're doing it? You'll never figure it out.
I mean, I don't really know what to say with that, because that's probably one of the smartest things I think I've ever heard.
Well, listen, a lot of people dump their shit on me, and my advice is always the same. I go, why are you worrying about what somebody else is doing? Remove that part and you're fine. There's nothing happening to you right now. You're creating this scenario where this person's off doing some other thing, and you're basing your mental health on their behavior. Listen, I struggle with it too, and I'll ruminate about shit too, and I'll replay stuff from the past, regrets I have, things I've done, all that shit. So yeah, I don't know that we ever master it, but I think it's the only goal to kind of keep in mind, which is this is how I should be. And then you can sustain it for longer periods, and you can cut off those. You can really train your brain to cut off thoughts. That I have found to be the truest fucking thing. You can, as a ruminator and an overthinker, you can rewire your brain to when those thoughts pop in, you kind of release them. You just cut it out and kind of transmute it, as they say. That's a real thing. There's nothing more useful than that. And then again, it's just you. It's you in the universe. It's you in the shower. It's going to be my new analogy.
It's just you in the shower.
It is. It's you in the shower. That's life. That's life. And yeah, we should get in more. There's a lot of stuff we can get into. I think we're running out of time here, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, technically Jen's stuck in traffic, so we're not doing a show after. So if you want to run a little bit longer, we can. I don't really care one way or the other. But yeah, we're technically over our time, but we can stay on for a little bit longer. Because yeah, I mean, I think probably what I'd like to do for the last segment is kind of explain to people, you know, one, we're going to be doing this about every 2 weeks, usually around this time, and we're gonna try to take a deeper dive after tonight into different parts of what we think make people tick, etc. And I think you've kind of hit on what may become our next topic. I think maybe manifestation might be the next best thing that we can kind of touch on, unless you've got somewhere else you want to go first. As far as
we can go anywhere with that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the man. We'll save that for the next one.
Well,
It's
yeah,
an interesting one.
yeah. Well,
It's one of those words. It's one of those buzzwords now, and I think a lot of people take it in a literal way.
yeah. Well, actually,
Here's my thing with the manifestation. It's that, okay, I'll relate it to meditation. Not to jump on next week's rant, but I've tried. I'm like the opposite personality. People think I'm like very zen and calm or whatever, but I'm not. I'm not the type that could meditate easily. I can't turn my brain off that easily. Or I just can't turn off my sensory input is what it is, right? I'm very, very hyper, what's the word? I'm hyper vigilant. So I'm always hyper aware of any stimulus, whether it's noises or lights or sounds. So it's very hard for me to completely block all that stuff out. But the most useful thing I heard about meditation, because I would kind of go in with, I would kind of do it with an objective in mind. And I heard this guy talking about it, and he said, you can't have any objective at all other than the meditation itself. The minute you start thinking, this is what I'm trying to get out of this, you already fucked it up. You're literally just stripping. That's why they say focus on just the one thing in the present. Most people say focus on your breath because it's in the present and it's a constant, and I could just focus on the sound of my breathing. And if I just do that and don't think about anything else, this actually was really useful. Stare at a wall for an hour. Sit on the floor in front of a wall and pick a spot on the wall and don't move for an hour. And for about 10, 15 minutes, your mind will be racing. You'll be thinking about it. And then at some point, it's kind of like when your eyes unfocus, your brain just kind of unfocuses. And that's where the stuff comes in that you didn't know was going to come in. And it's not the stuff you thought you were achieving. But this was a whole roundabout way of, I think, a manifestation in the same way, which is you don't sit there and go, I want this house, or I want this car, or I want this job even, or I want this relationship. You don't sit there and think about these specific things that you want to manifest in your life, and then they appear. For me, the manifestation just comes down to delving into yourself, to figuring out you're stripping away. It's stripping away all that bullshit. It's the meditation. It's the I'm here in the present with me and the universe and my truest energy, and I'm removing all these weird walls and insecurities and fears and false beliefs and all the bullshit that I've formed throughout my life. I'm stripping all that away. And then what comes in, that is the manifestation. That's what's meant to be. And it's not some preconceived notion you had in your head of, I want to manifest this specific thing. It's, I want to be my truest, most authentic, most stripped down, open, honest, genuine version of myself, loving. And then what's meant to be will meant to be. And it may not be the thing you thought you were trying to manifest. For next week.
Yeah, and we will get into that more next week. But I will say that is the trickiest thing about manifestation is sometimes you don't realize that when you're trying to manifest one thing, you wind up manifesting the exact opposite. And that's probably going to be...
Because you can't try. You can't have a specific thing. Then you're already basing it on these, surface perceptions. And it's not actually coming from that other place. That other place doesn't have past and future and those types of aspirations and things like that. The only aspiration it has is I'm going to be the truest, most loving, healthiest version of myself. And then what will be, will be. That's how I look at it. I think that's the only way to be. That Buddha, we're talking Zen. It's that Buddhist shit. That's how they are. That Eastern stuff is right on. It's not that's the other constant. You're just talking about everyone's issues are based on other people. The other thing you'll find is everyone's issues are based on past and future. How many things are actually in the present moment hurting you? None. There's nothing in this room hurting me right now. Now, if I was on fire, right? If someone was pointing a gun in my face, or if I had even a slip disc in my back or something, right? I would be miserable about that thing in the moment. Okay, but 99% of the stuff people worried about is stuff that either already happened, that they're upset, regretful, depressed, it's in the past, which those were just other present moments anyway. There is no such thing actually as past and future. It's always the present moment. Or they're worried about what's going to happen. They're worried about the future. They're anxious. They're nervous. What if this happens? What if this doesn't happen? Very, very rarely, if somebody's conflicted about something, is it happening right now in the present moment? And therefore, what are we doing? We're occupying our brains and our emotions with stuff that's not even here with us. Why do we do that?
Because we're crazy. I mean,
no, really, it is crazy. It is crazy to do. It is crazy that you could be sitting in your room feeling like you want to fucking die, which I've been there because of something that happened a year ago. Right? It's like, what is that? It's not changing anything about you. Like I said, you could go sit in that bush, go take a shower. You could have come from any situation and you'd still be you. You'd still be Rick. Not Rick. You'd still be your real name. Standing out there in the grass. What's the difference? What would be the difference if your whole family was killed in a fire a year ago? Or you never had a family? Or you have 12 kids? It's like you're still just you out in that field. Why are we basing this angst on stuff that's not here with us? And everyone dies anyway. So, like, what are we even that upset about? I'm not saying you shouldn't be devastated if your family died in a fire. I just, it's an extreme example, but we're choosing to put things in the room with us that aren't actually in the room with us.
Well,
and we'll do that for a year, 10 years, 20 years. People go their whole life that way.
Well, I mean, and it all comes back to perspective. Because if that is how you've been programmed, then that is your perspective. And especially in Western society, that is how we are programmed. We are programmed to think about tomorrow. We're programmed to worry about tomorrow. I mean, I don't want to bust my theology degree out, but hell, even the Bible says, why are you worried about things when I take care of the sparrows? Because that's what we're told we're supposed to do. And this goes back to kind of how we opened the show. A lot of what causes mental health issues for everybody is societal pressures, because everybody thinks that they and the same thing was true for me. There were boxes that I felt like had to be checked off at a specific time. I needed to have my degree by this age. I needed to have a career by this age. I needed to have a family by this age.
You just nailed it by saying by a specific time. Time is the culprit. Time isn't real, right? We created time so that we can organize society, so that we can schedule things. So I can say to you, okay, once the sun rotates another 6 times, 6 1/3 times, I'll meet you at this food place, right? But we're basing all this on, which is really insane to think about. We're basing it on this rock spinning around and then revolving around this fireball. And so we go, okay, by the time this rock revolves around that fireball, another 4 revolutions, I should have this thing done. It's like, what is that? None of that's real. It doesn't even exist scientifically out in space, right? Time for us, this earthly construct of time, doesn't apply a million light years away. It doesn't apply anywhere. Space and time become the same thing out there, yeah? But so we take this tool that we created to organize things, and then we give it importance, and we base everything on it. I've been married to this person for 15 years. Well, what does that fucking mean? I don't know. How you can meet someone tomorrow, you'd be more in love with them in a week than this person you've known your whole life. So you were with this person for more revolutions. I don't know. I think time and the pressure, like you said, of time and the way that weaves into society, I think that fucks people up more than anything. And if we could somehow remove that from our personal lives and only apply it as like a scheduling tactic, I think we'd be a lot healthier people.
Well, I will say that is, other than, the fact that I have to be on air at a certain time, I have, now that I'm semi-retired, adopted a lot looser schedule just because I really, now, and this is something else that I discovered I really, really hated when I started doing call center work. And this is one reason why every time I moved, I started change jobs. I started trying to work on getting into management because I don't know if any of you have ever done phone monkey work, but having every moment of your day scheduled down to the millisecond can drive you insane. And it's one of the reasons why I still tell people today, and this is almost a year later at this point, that I hate talking on the phone because I spent so much time talking on the phones, even as a manager. And there were certain times that I needed to be off the phone, or they started looking at me going, why are you still on this call? Why haven't you moved on to your next call? So if I'm on the phone with somebody for longer than 10 minutes, I'm legit starting to sweat, and nobody understands it. And I'm like, you have not done call center work. You don't understand how ingrained into you that becomes. And that comes back to exactly what you were just talking about. Time can be this thing that completely stresses you out if you let it. And there are certain jobs that will make you insane if you let them. And call center work happens to be one of them because everybody looks at it like it's this really easy job and it's laid back and you get to sit down. Trust me, I used to kick in doors and dodge bullets for a living. I would rather do that.
Yeah, I did a couple of those back in the day, and there's nothing harder. It's cold calling people all day. It's the fucking worst.
I mean, well, there's the cold calling, and even the ones where they're calling you because there's just so much that you have to do within a certain amount of time. I mean, because like I said, when I went to work for Southwest Airlines, I started as a reservation agent. So I was on the phone with hundreds of people every day for 8 hours, and I was only supposed to be on the phone with each individual customer for 300 seconds.
Yeah, we become, listen, we create these constructs and we become prisoners to them, and we're not supposed to. Just even think about the fact that, again, remove all the spiritual souls, whatever. Humans have been around, modern human, 200,000 years, give or take. How long have we been sitting on the phone? For 1% of that, less than 1% of that. So
less than 1%.
Yeah, I don't think, and especially now with these devices, we're not evolved yet. Our current species is not evolved yet for that to feel comfortable and normal. I was talking to someone about this in regard to ADD and how everyone's ADD now. And, I've been told by a lot of people that I'm insanely ADD. And it wasn't a thing when I was a kid. I never even heard the expression, I don't think, till I was an adult. But maybe they would have diagnosed me because I couldn't do homework. I couldn't study. I could barely sit in class. I wasn't, hyper and bouncing off of shit, but I couldn't sit and do these to this day. Like if you said, John, you have to write an email now or do a spreadsheet, I crawl out of my skin. It's so uncomfortable for me. And maybe I could take a pill and it would make me more comfortable doing a spreadsheet, but maybe I'm not supposed to be fucking comfortable doing a spreadsheet because that's not my bag. And so I should feel like my skin's on fire when you put me in front of this screen and tell me I have to press these little buttons to put these things into boxes, and I'm not supposed to be doing that. And I don't feel ADD when I'm at a concert or a football game or, anything. I don't feel like that when I'm driving on the road or listening to music or having a fun conversation with somebody or any number of things. So if it was a disorder, wouldn't I just always feel like that? So now it's a disorder because I only feel like that. They've done studies with kids too. These kids can't sit there for 2 seconds. They give them a Fortnite game. They sit there for 6 hours. Well, if the kid has a attention disorder, how come he can do the thing he enjoys?
Yeah, I've run into that with my middle son because he's one of the ones that has been medically deemed, with special needs, and is actually special needs enough that he gets a check. So he's about to be 29. So I have been trying with him for 13 years to get him to, and I've tried to help him with it. I've even tried to orally ask him the questions just to get his learner's permit. So at some point I can maybe eventually teach him how to drive. But as soon as he starts trying to pick up the book, he loses everything. But you sit him in front of a computer, and he can play some of the most complicated video games for hours. I'm like, how can you not understand a driver's manual and be terrified?
It shows you that it's not just a black and white disorder. It would be like saying I don't have an ability to read, but then I can read things I like. That makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it shows how tied into our emotional psyche that stuff really is.
Well, and I think that is a big part of it, because I think that's part of where we have started failing as a society. Because now, as soon as there's a problem, it doesn't matter what it is, the first thing they want to do is throw a pill at it. I am somebody that has nerve issues because I was injured at work. Everybody knows the story. Not going into it again tonight. Just go into the archives. You can find it. But so I constantly am in pain. Like I am in pain so often that my body has learned to filter out pain. It actually freaked a friend of mine out the other day because I was doing something and didn't realize that I had hurt myself. And they're looking down and they're like, dude, you just peeled like 14 layers of your skin off on your leg. Does that not hurt? Like, oh shit, I didn't even realize. Because I'm constantly in pain. But every time and this was one of the things that used to drive my ex-wife crazy, because she's like, well, you should go back to the doctor. I'm like, why? Every time I try to go to the doctor to see if there's anything that they can do, it's temporary or they want to put me on narcotics. And the temporary shit doesn't work because all that does is make me feel normal for just a little bit, and then it wears off, and then my brain remembers how much I hurt, and then it takes my brain forever to remember how to filter out how much I hurt, and it makes me unbearable for like a day or so, and I just don't want to do that. And it's kind of the same thing that you were talking about. I could take a pill that might help me do a spreadsheet, but it's not normal for me to do a spreadsheet, or it wouldn't fucking freak me out if I was trying to do a spreadsheet. And there's just so many things society-wise that drive me absolutely insane that are all tied into the same thing. Like one of the shows that I would love to do at some point is to sit down and discuss all the different ways that we now know how human beings learn and why nobody uses those anywhere. Because you want to know what causes insanity? So putting a kid in a school that has a cookie-cutter approach on teaching when there's somebody that learns better with their hands. And you've given them a test that proves that they learn better with their hands. But then you make them conform. This is another thing that absolutely drove me crazy. And I said this in a Star Trek group today. Because I'm in a lot of different Star Trek groups because I'm a sci-fi nerd. And one of the things that's absolutely drove me crazy is lately it's, everything's about, well, if you're conservative, you can't be in this group. And if you're conservative, you can't do this and you can't do that. And I'm like, look, so and for anybody who's not a Star Trek nerd, I apologize in advance because there's a saying in Star Trek that I have always kind of aspired to, even as a conservative, and it's infinite diversity and infinite combinations. It's how the Vulcans actually, their whole society viewed the universe once they embraced logic. But the interesting thing is being in a group full of people that supposedly embrace this thing, and what they've actually done is they've changed it. It's now infinite diversity with inherent conformity.
Ugh. The fact that we're inserting all this rhetoric and shit into listen, I don't know anything about Star Trek, but the fact that this is weaving its way into Star Trek forums and such, it's just so insane. Can we just remove this shit from everything and everywhere, from every show and commercial and movie and concert, and go back to when, and sports, oh my God, sports, can we just go back to where, like, listen, I'm not against, let me just, for the record, you said you're conservative. I'm as fucking libertarian. Everyone should do whatever makes them happy. I do not care. Somebody told me the other day they went to a baseball game, and it was like they had like the pregame like pride celebration. Like the pride people came out with the rainbow flag, and she had her nephew's there, and whatever, he gets it, he's older, but I go, and he was saying stuff about it, but I go, there's 8-year-old kids in the crowd right now turning to their dad, asking them about gay shit. And it's like, you're there to watch a game. What are we doing? Who cares what kind of sex you have? Nobody cares. Everyone, it's like, or if you want to have your own parade on your own time, like, do that. I know no one's going to the baseball game because they want to think about gender constructs. It's not what it's for.
Well, I mean, so
And no one's going in the Star Trek room because they want to hear about who's conservative and who's liberal, and it's like, let's talk about Star Trek.
Well, the thing with Star Trek is it actually has always had a tinge of what they now call woke, which that has now completely jumped the shark. But Star Trek was one of the first places where you saw an African American main character who wasn't a housekeeper. So it's always had that. And, Gene Roddenberry was a socialist, so that's the future was a socialist future where everybody was working for the betterment of themselves or the betterment of humanity, and money didn't matter anymore. Blah blah blah, yada yada yada. And look, I can get past all of that because I would love for us to be able to get to that point someday. But as long as there is inherent greed, because there is everywhere, then we're never going to be able to get there. We have to figure out how to conquer that first, and we haven't done that yet on either side. The difference between communism and capitalism is even broken capitalism can raise you from the bottom, get you to the middle, and eventually, if you want to, help you find a way to get to the top. Communism, you can't do that. You stay where you are born, and there is a rift between you, and that's why even imperfect capitalism, in my opinion, is one of the better systems. And and I know you're not a Trekkie, but for people that are, you'll notice that eventually they started weaving that kind of stuff in, like in the books, because in the series they never had money. In the books they always had money, and I'm like, wait, I thought there wasn't money. I'm confused. But then I figured out that even communist Russia, they have money. I'm like, I thought I don't that. See, to me that just seems weird because I'm like, if everything is given to you by the government, why do you need money?
See, when I think of communal living and such, I think of it minus the governing body. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of the commune when you have somebody confiscating and then redistributing.
Exactly.
Right? It should be among the people. That's the utopia that communists really think that they're going for. And then they go, well, we want to give more power to a centralized government. Well, you just defeated the whole fucking purpose of the commune. And that's where people get tripped up. But I think if humanity, listen, if we're still around in 500 years, 1,000 years, 5,000 years, it will be communal living. We'll have nowhere else to go because resources are no longer going to be finite at some point. But with water, desalination, whatever the fuck, everyone's going to have water. There won't be a shortage of crops. That there won't be enough jobs. For capitalism is great when there's jobs. With the technology and the AI and everything else, I mean, we're just barely scratching the surface. Again, fast forward 5,000 years from now, the difference from ancient Egypt to now, from now to then, with processors and computer tech the whole time. Think about where we'll be.
Well, that's assuming
we'll have no choice.
That's assuming there isn't some sort of societal collapsing in between then and
now. Yeah, assuming we're still around, we'll have no choice but to go back to a communal style living because there won't be jobs for people to do. Money won't be viewed the same way. We'll be on some digital social currency system. And it will be, hey, you make the fucking potatoes and I'll make the corn. And this guy's going to bring the wheat over, whatever. Like, well, that's what it'll have to be. There won't be. You can't have this competitive capitalism. It's great now, and it's what we should have. I totally agree with you, and we should never install communism, but I think we will naturally eventually evolve and gravitate toward a communal style living, minus that governing body that confiscates and redistributes everything.
Yeah, and that's the thing to me, because communism sounds great on paper when you do it to a small scale, but when you start trying to expand it and you start pushing it out to where there's a central group that controls everything and they decide, what you do. I mean, if it's something where you guys have come together as a small group and you're like, hey, Bob's going to do this and Jenny's going to do this and John's going to do this and Rick's going to do this.
I'd love to live on a commune with like 100 cool people.
And that might work for
Right.
that. I mean, and it could for a time. I mean, but one of the first pilgrim colonies was actually designed that way, and eventually they starved because everybody was like, well, if I'm gonna do all the work, I'm not gonna do any work, and then they ran out of food.
No, it becomes real cultist real fast, and there's always becomes a leader, and then there always becomes a hierarchy and all that shit. Yeah, it never works the way that people would like it to, and yeah, you're always going to end up with some sort of totalitarian type system, because all you're doing, type of communism they want to install here and in other places, yeah, you're taking power away from the people and you're giving it to centralized government, and you're saying that you're doing it in the name of giving more power to the people, and it's like, how can you not see it? How can you also not look at, other than, and by the way, Nazi Germany was a socialistic system, as you know, too. But you can't find, other than that, a couple examples, it's all been leftist communism every time. Like if you look at every shitty totalitarian dictatorship throughout world history, that's what it's been every time. That's what it's always been.
But this kind of ties into, and believe it or not, there's a mental health angle. So we may actually do a show about this, because this ties into the whole, the whole, propaganda thing, that basically, depending on what you ingest every day, what you subject yourself to, it can completely change how you view the world. I mean, you can literally have a conservative and a liberal sitting in the same room watching the same thing, and they see things completely different. And I've seen this play out over and over again on social media. And everybody tells me that social media isn't life, but I'm going to tell you, people on social media are being a lot more honest with you than they are in real life, because in real life they can get punched in the face. Social media, they'll let the barriers down. They'll tell you the truth because they don't care.
There's some of that, but you know what? There's just such a built-in need. I talked about this on my recent pod. There's such a built-in need for people to feel like they're part of a group, to belong and connect to a group. And I think that's a lot of what you get on social as well. It's like, oh, these people, look, I'll just use the I was talking about it today with Jake Shields or whatever. All the Jew hate that's like just openly out there now on Twitter. It's like everybody just jumping on the Jew. How many people really are sitting home with hatred in their heart for Jewish people? I don't think it's a big number. I think it's a very tiny percentage. And I think the rest go, hey, if I jump on this group and I say these things, these people love it. And they've accepted me. And now I can feel like I'm part of this group and I have status within this group. And it's like, everyone's just a fucking sheep. Nobody's thinking for themselves and actually having, deep, considerate thoughts about the subject. They don't know what they're talking about. They're just looking for the shock value. They're looking for the clicks. They're looking for the thing to jump in, and in a year it'll be something else. I don't think they have any conviction. Most of these people.
So this was not somewhere that I planned on going, but interestingly enough, I had a guest on the Whatever Show last night that has actually done deep dive research into the funding for a lot of the groups that are pushing this Jewish hate, and they're all the same people.
And they're all fucking in the Middle East, by the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have ties to the Middle East. Their funding is coming from there. But a lot of the people that you're seeing at these protests are all part of the same group, and and nobody really wants to talk about that part. So a lot of
they're all a bunch of dorky incel fucking creeps too. It's like, maybe if they were cool people, you know what I mean?
Maybe
like I'd be more worried about it. That's why I always, at the end of the day, I'm like, nobody's gonna gravitate toward these fucking weirdos.
Well, I mean, not naturally anyway, and I mean, this goes back to something that was like making the rounds. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I think it was Fox News did like a man on the street interview with two chicks that were hanging out at one of these protests. And then basically he starts talking to one of them. He's like, okay, so what are you guys here for? Well, we think the university should be more inclusive and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, so no, what are you specifically here for? She's like, well, I don't really know. And looks to the other one who happens to be a blonde and says, do you know why we're here? And they look at each other and go, no, we should probably be a little more informed. And then there's people behind them that are literally screaming from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And they don't know why they're there.
Well, that's what I mean. And even the ones who have memorized a few actual facts about it, they still have zero understanding of the big picture context. Of course, it's all knee jerk. Let me just jump in this thing. It really is. I heard a guy explaining he was really breaking down the biological need for status and connection, and how that applies to religion, how that applies to politics, how it applies to everything from jobs you take. People want the connection to a group, and then they want the status within the group. They want to be known as a good one. So if I'm Jewish, I go, okay, my connection is to the Jewish community. That's my connection. Well, now what's the status? Well, now what do I have to do to be a good Jew? What do I have to do and say to be considered a good one within this connection I've formed? And people do that with everything. And they find that niche group and they go, okay, now what do I have to do and say and act to be considered a good one within this group? Well, what are other people saying and doing? Well, now I need to say and do those things. And they were pointing out, you'll see it if you look at a waiter at a nice restaurant. He's adopted this waiter behavior, his mannerisms, the way he walks, the way he speaks, because he's formed this connection as a waiter. And now it's okay. What do I have to do to have status in this nice restaurant? And so they kind of all just kind of conform and adopt. And it's not always unhealthy, and there can be healthy versions of that, but it's why it's so appealing for people to be in cults. And they lay it out for you in a cult. They go, here's what you have to do to be a good cult member. Wear your shoes this way. Make your bed this way. This is how you prepare your food. And then people eat it up because they go, this person's giving me this map. And if I just do these things, well, I'm going to have status within this group. It's just such a primal thing for people. They're very easily drawn to that. I think that's what we're seeing on social.
No, and I completely agree. All right, so we have definitely gone well over our time. Do you have any other points you want to make on the way out the door?
We can get into it next week. We'll get back to mental health. We did, an hour on politics? No.
No, we didn't do about 30 minutes on politics.
I would just say in regard to the show and in regard to mental health, just to bring it back, is that and you brought up a minute ago with the over medicating and stuff. It's a funny thing. When I was a kid and when you were a kid, I'm sure, obviously, we couldn't talk about things like this. And I actually had some pretty rough issues when I was younger, way worse than I've had as I got older. But when I was younger, I couldn't talk. I would never, ever say to a friend, I'm having this issue. It would be unimaginable to me back then, when I was a teenager or a kid or whatever, even in my early 20s. I would never, ever, ever have admitted that shit to anybody. And that was the hardest part, was kind of having this where you have to hide stuff. And what if somebody knew? What if they noticed? What if they found out that I'm dealing with this? And we have jumped the shark in a huge way, like you said, which is now everybody's like, I have anxiety. I have depression. Everyone's on Prozac. And fucking like, I'm not saying a lot of people don't need medication. A lot of people do, and they should be on it, but a lot of people don't. And I don't know what my point was there, which is it's good that we talk about it, even if it has gone too far in another direction. But I think that the idea that we can be open and not have to hide and be ashamed, the idea that I can say on here that I have some issues, or I would never have even a few years ago considered saying something like that.
No, I mean, and
So I think it's all good.
and that's kind of the thing, and that's kind of why I wanted to start doing a show like this, is because, you know, as we bring up the different aspects of mental health and how there are different things that impact different people and different things that they can do that maybe would help. And the one thing that I will say is my parting thought on the way out the door: stop turning on to Tate Bros. Just stop.
You guys are the worst, man.
Just stop. They are not who you. I mean, especially, I'm serious right now. If you're listening to me, these people are not who you want to emulate. They're just not. I'm telling you right now, they don't live the life they're showing you they live on social media. I need you to think about this for a second, because every single one of you listening to me right now and watching me right now, even though you can't see me on camera, that we're working on fixing that, because I tried it last night and some things didn't go well, so I'm redesigning my studio to make it easier. So there probably will be more videos starting next week. But for those of you watching, for those of you listening, I want you to think about how you frame your life on social media and how most of the time you put your best possible face forward. This is what they're doing. These people don't own half the things they show you on social media that they own. They rent them to take pictures with them, or they find them and then they take pictures of them, and then they get run off by the people that actually own the cars. I've seen videos of some of these people that supposedly hang out with the Tate Bros. They're like, oh, check out my new Bugatti. And then somebody leaks it because dude's like, what are you doing on my car? They take off running. These people are framing this stuff for you in a way that makes you want to suck it up, eat it up, and pay for whatever it is you're trying to sell. You are making them rich, but they're not going to make you rich.
No. Well, and not only that, the whole community is fucking guys now. Even if you did get that stuff and you did get the Bugatti, I can tell you that ain't going to fill that void in you at all. You'll just be a miserable asshole with a fucking Bugatti. And all these guys are miserable anyway. And I get why it came about. And that's the part where it's like I have some sympathy for it, because it did come about as a knee jerk to what started as the feminist movement and this toxic masculinity tag. And I get why men were like, fuck you, I'm going to be masculine. Stop telling me, because it is true, and you shouldn't stifle true masculinity, and it's not toxic to be mad. So I get why guys gravitate to the opposite of it, but yeah, they definitely took it too far in the wrong direction, no question.
Yeah, but it's one of those things, exactly what you just said. They took it all the way to an extreme, to the max, to somewhere that it didn't need to be. And now they are presenting something that is just completely just not true. And again, I just want to relate this back to everybody. Think about the life that you typically present on social media, where you make sure that everything your house looks nice before you post a picture, your hair's put just right before you post a picture. These people are doing the same thing to sell you a product, and and that's just it. Look, everything that we do here is designed to eventually make us money, but you are allowed to voluntarily support us by listening to us, sharing our stuff, and telling people about us. Everything we do is tied to revenue streams. I'm never going to ask you for money unless you're affiliated with it somewhere and I'm doing extra work for you and this, that, and the other. Then I may be like, hey, you want to kick me $5 or something. And that's still voluntary. But I'm never going to be like, hey, I'm going to tell you how to take over the world and I'm going to charge you $500 to do it. No. Come on.
Well, I think you're touching on the main thing that's like my main bag in life, which is just the authenticity. It's like, even if I disagree with everything somebody says, if I feel they're being authentic, I respect it. That's why I posted this thing making fun of Jake Shields today or yesterday or today. I don't fucking remember. But somebody goes, oh, you're just going to insult him rather than answer his question? I go, in his case, yeah, because he's not being genuinely inquisitive. If I felt someone was being genuinely inquisitive, even if I thought that what they said was complete nonsense, I would be respectful of it and answer their question. And that's all the difference in the world. And whether it's the Tates or anyone else, And I don't know how other people gauge authenticity. I just gauge it on my own senses and what I feel from people and their energy. And maybe I've been wrong before or whatever. But yeah, if I watch a guy on a video, I think 99% of the time I can tell, is this guy full of shit or is he coming from an authentic place? And again, he may be preaching the virtues of socialism in this country, but I'll respect it if I think he's really coming from an authentic place.
I mean,
and I'll have an intellectually honest debate with that person all day.
And that's my thing. I don't mind if I disagree. How one of the first podcasts I ever did was, and we jokingly, once we made it more serious, billed ourselves as the low rent podcast version of Hannity and Combs. I did 2 hours every Saturday with one of my best friends at the time who happened to be a liberal. And we would butt heads every single week. And that's what eventually led to me creating America Off the Rails and all the other stuff that I started doing because, you know, I love the guy to death, but eventually it was like, I need another outlet because I love you, but sometimes I just want to stab you in the face. And he knew that because I told him that. But that's the thing. If you're being authentic with me, if you're being genuine with me, if you're not just coming at me with, you know, Orange Man bad or this, that, and the other, whatever it is, whether it's politics, religion, life in general, if you're coming to me with genuine concerns or you're coming to me with actual questions, I would do everything I can to help you answer and understand those questions. I'm hardwired to do that. I have a theology degree. It's baked into me. But at the same time, if I feel like you're just coming at me just to come at me, I may have a theology degree and I may be an ordained minister, but I don't have a church, which means I don't have to always behave. And I'm sure you've seen my social media feed.
Yes.
So
well, Orty, you're no Orty. That's for you. He kindly dismissed someone earlier. Who's this new Zen version of you? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, to be fair, he did have his appendix out recently, so he's been on some pretty good pain meds.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was like, where's the 20 quote tweets ripping this guy apart?
Well, he's been doing that a lot more lately, so I think he's kind of just like, you know what? I think even I'm getting tired of this thing.
Well, you know what it is too, and this is just true. It is back to what we were talking about before about just kind of accepting everyone for who they are or whatever, and not taking on that. And energy is absolutely real, and karma. You know, I don't view karma as just similar to the manifestation. People think of karma as just this clear cut. Oh, you do something good happens to you. You do something bad. No, it's not that at all. For me, it's just, what kind of energy am I taking on, and what kind of energy am I putting out there? And to even get into conversations with some of these people, it's bad karma. I go, I don't want that energy even entering my fucking life. I don't want it anywhere in my aura field. You know what I mean? So it's like, even if someone comes at me, I politely and condescendingly kind of just dismiss them, because sure, and I've been guilty of it, I could get into a 2-hour debate. I just did one but 9 times out of 10, I don't want to carry that energy. I don't want any part of that. I'm not even going to let you into my bubble. It makes us unhealthy. It has a really tangible effect on our lives, I feel like.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from. For me, I'm kind of the exact opposite. I actually like when they try to get in my face, because then I feel like I can kind of, let some stuff out that I've been holding.
Yeah, but have you ever have you ever changed anyone's mind?
No, but that's not why I do it.
No, but in other words, right. But interestingly enough, there's been a few times where I am kind of a sarcastic dick and they don't really pick up on it. And then they kind of like become my friend, because they're like, oh, you actually had a respect. Like they think I'm being, because I'm not just with the ad hominems and shit like that. I'm not tooting my own horn by saying that. It's just, I don't think anyone's ever had a contentious debate, online or otherwise, where the other person went, yeah, you know what, you're right. I never looked at it that way. So it's like, well, then what are you doing? If that's never going to happen and that's not a possibility, then what are we doing?
No, I get it. I mean, honestly, most of the time I try to stay out of it, and unless I'm just trying to boost. I mean, because I am still trying to successfully monetize Twitter on a recurring basis. I've managed to hit the number a couple of times, and then I fall below again. They're like, "Yeah, we're going to pause your payments again." I'm like,
you know what it is too is that it's not real. So I'm definitely not saying don't defend yourself. That I would say the opposite. Like if someone's an actual threat to your life or your well-being or even your financial income stream or any of that stuff, yeah, rip that person's throat out and do the complete opposite of what I just said. But it's that most people aren't actually important to your life, and it's like some avatar in Iran or something. You know what I mean? It's like, what am I going to do? Have a debate with this guy who's like not even a real person?
Yeah, I mean, and he's kind of like, because I'm in a couple of different groups that are tied to the station stuff, and somebody that was in one of those was like, just, reminding me that the other day, they're like, remember, when you argue with someone on Twitter, it's more of a spectator sport. And I'm like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, if you're having fun with it, I would say then that's fine. It's like, but if it's putting you in like an agitated mood.
No. See, that's just it. It doesn't with me. Honestly, I kind of enjoy just, because it happened to me again today, because Melinda Gates put out her, I'm voting for Joe Biden, and these are the reasons. And I'm like, you're kidding me, right? You were voting for him anyway. And then everybody started coming in my feed and be like, well, what did Biden do that was so terrible? And one dude, I just grabbed every link I had and said, here, I'm going to start here. And just linked and linked and linked and linked and linked and linked. And they're like, I'm not reading all that. I'm like, well, you asked me what he did that was so terrible. I gave you sources. What else you want? And then it kind of devolved from there. And then I had one guy screaming at me about my grammar. So I was like, dude, it's social media. But here, you forgot your comma, and this word doesn't need to be here.
Yeah, I mean, politics is such a perfect example because it's like, and I know we have to run, but is there any person in the country right now? I really mean this. Is there a single voting person in the country who's sitting home right now, undecided between Trump and Biden?
Not that has picked a side. I will say I think there's some independents that may still be on the fence.
No, there's not. They're on the fence. Here's what they're on the fence about: whether they're going to show up and vote.
Yeah,
there's not a single human who's like, yeah, I kind of like Biden for these reasons, but I also kind of like Trump for these reasons. I'm not sure which guy I'm going to vote for. There's maybe like 2 people like that in the whole country. There's certainly nobody on Twitter or social media that's going to read a single tweet from any politician or talking head or news that's going to change their vote based on somebody's take. That's just not. Now, you might get, I think it maybe affects turnout. Like I said, there's probably people who were like, I might not even vote. They got to get me a little more excited. I think turnout's important, but I don't think anyone's getting flipped. I get these texts all day about Biden and whoever. Imagine reading a text and changing your vote. Like, what are they even doing? Is there any human that ever read a solicited political text and then voted because of that text?
No.
They spent millions on this. Does it work?
I don't think so.
I can't picture the human who that works on.
Although I will admit, I'm getting more texts this season than I've ever had.
More times a million. I got like 2 last year. I get them every day. I literally get at least 1 political text a day, and I delete and block, and then they just come in from another number.
Oh, you're only getting like 1 or 2 a day? It's probably because
No, I'm getting them every day.
I get like 10 a day.
I got like 1 a week maybe.
I get like 10 a day. And I'll block.
Yeah,
I get like, and it'll come in from a weird number, and I'll block it. Then I get another one that's like, "Hey, Donald Trump needs your help." I'm like, "No, he doesn't. I'm already voting for him."
So,
and I already gave him
half
some
of
money.
them are soliciting donations. Do you think, like, what percentage of people get that text and then donate?
From the links, hopefully nobody, because I don't trust that shit any further than I can throw them. But I'm hoping
nobody's going to click on If you want to donate to Trump or Biden campaign, you're going to go to their official website and you're going to click the donate button. Nobody's clicking the link from a spam number. That's have to be Like, what are they even doing? And half of them aren't even asking for donation. They're just trying to like amp you up. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you know, some grandma from Kenosha that sounds like the old "That's Not How This Works" lady from the Facebook commercials might be clicking on the link. I'm just saying, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. All right. Anyway,
I think there's a lot of noise out there, and everybody's yelling their points at each other, and nobody's changing anybody's minds. That's what it looks like to me.
well, no, and you're exactly right. I mean, and this is something that I have come to terms with doing some of this for as long as I've been doing it. You know, I've had to come to terms with the fact that I'm really probably not going to change very many people's minds, but I have built a core group that has become a bigger audience that doesn't feel so alone anymore. Because I know what inspired me to start doing this, because I even before I started, you know, discussing politics on social media and then eventually started doing podcasting and everything else, I was in the car all the time because that's when I ran my business. So I was working all the time. I was either up nights, working posts, running errands for the administrative side during the day. I was literally putting 200-300 miles on my truck a day. So I was always on the radio or always in the truck. And for me, if I turned on music, because as a kid, you know, I always had music when I was trying to go to sleep. So if I had music on and I was sleepy, bad combo. So I started turning on talk radio. And that's when I started finding things like Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and everything else. And over the years, I just started feeling like, especially with like Sean Hannity and stuff, because for a while it was just like I felt like the bigger people, once they got established, because Rush Limbaugh started this thing like years ago. Nobody had, AM radio was on the way out. Nobody had any idea what to do with it. He came up with this crazy idea, and then, you know, gets a little bit of traction, starts talking about Snapple, and then all of a sudden an entire freaking industry is born basically seemingly overnight, even though he put in years of work to get there. But it's like as people got established, and all of a sudden it was like they stopped really listening to the people that were calling in. It was kind of like it was kind of like the social media version of taking callers. All they were doing was screaming their points
sports
back
talk
at them.
radio too was huge.
Yeah. And but so it just was one of those things where, you know, I got the idea of, you know, is there a way that we could do what we were doing on the Facebook page and do it in a format like a podcast? And this was years ago. This was before anybody really started doing it. There was a little website that still exists called Blog Talk Radio, and that's where we started. I had no idea how to do it. One of my cousins, who has actually done some of this work and actually teach me some things along the way, was our original producer, and this was the one that I did with a friend of mine that I was just telling you about. Our first episode was so bad, like literally so bad, that we made fun. The second episode, we made fun of the first episode. That's how bad it was. Because I was so nervous that I was talking 90 miles an hour. I'm not even kidding, because when I get nervous, I talk really fast. And I was so nervous that I was talking super fast. And then he had a headset microphone that he was breathing into, and it was. So the whole second episode, every once in a while, my cousin, and this is what I told him to do, as I would start talking, would cue up Speedy Gonzalez. And then Dave would start talking, and he would cue up Darth Vader. And because we made fun of ourselves, and everybody was kind of comfortable with it, because we realized how bad we sucked, everybody started listening. And then it actually got serious, and we completely rebranded, made it more of a serious kind of thing instead of kind of a little campy thing with cartoon characters and everything else. And we became one of their featured podcasts for like a year. And it took off from there. And then eventually it kind of died over there because everybody started finding other ways to do it. But it was just this thing that I never thought I was going to be able to do. And then the whole time I'm doing this, the other part of this story is I had a friend who was doing, you know, broadcast style internet radio for music. And so I pitched him the idea of trying to do a talk version, and he laughed me out of his office. And that's when I reached out to my cousin. I was like, hey, help me figure out how to do this. It's something that I kind of feel like I need to do. One, because, you know, at that point, the up until this most recent time, the biggest catastrophe in my life had happened. A business that I had put years into was pretty much gone, and I didn't know how to cope with it. So I needed some sort of a release valve. kind of like with talking about Facebook earlier when I was posting about my divorce. So the funny thing is, after doing that for like 6 months and us taking off and getting featured and everything else, this dude is blowing up my phone, the same one that laughed me out of his office. He's like calling me on like a Saturday, and it's, you know, I'm doing show research and everything because we're supposed to be on there in like an hour. So I'm like, dude, I texted him. I said, dude, I'll call you in a little bit. We're about to do a show. He's like, I need you to call me as soon as you can. I was like, I will when I'm done. Just what's the deal? So I get done with the show and I call him and he's like, I bought call letters. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, I bought the rights to K98FM.com, which was one of the at the time was one of the biggest internet radio stations around, even though nobody really knew what it was yet. As far as that was like a name that everybody knew. And he said, I'm also building K98 Talk to go with it, and I want you to run it. And that's what led to all of this. Almost everybody that I work with now is a relationship that I built through that. And then eventually we had a falling out because there were things that I wanted to do that he didn't want to do, and there were things that I needed to do that he wasn't willing to do. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to figure out how to do it on my own. And then that's where this one came from. And I've been running it that way ever since. And the reason I bring all of this up is because there are things that you can do if you are having one of those mental health moments. Find something that brings you peace, even if it's 5 minutes a day. Whatever it is, whether it's a shower, you know, going for a drive, finding a hobby. Just do something.
I mean, you even mentioned, journaling earlier, and people think of that as like a feminine thing or whatever. Yeah, anything that gets you out of your head for a minute, and anything that's authentic to you. That's the real key, right? If something's a real part of you, then let it out. Figure out an outlet for it. I do like voice memos to myself often, right? Just like kind of as a form of journaling, just to kind of dump a thought out of my head. I do it a lot on my pod too, but I do it all the time. I voice memo myself all the time, just random thoughts. I barely even go back and listen. Just like the act of saying it is enough usually. People don't do that enough. We're very distracted and caught up in all the noise.
Well, I mean, and we really do need to wrap here in a second, but part of it is just that there's so much noise now. I mean, because we are inundated with everything, and it's like the call center job that I was talking about. And I was already somebody that could do it because that's what made me good at being a private investigator and everything else that I used to do. But multitasking is such a way of life now, and if you can't do it, you get overloaded. And there are people that literally can't do it, and they expect you to do it now on every job. I don't care what it is. And it's just some people are not wired that way.
I'm not wired that way. And I've become worse with age.
I mean, everything.
For sure.
Everything becomes worse with age, dude.
No, but my ability to... Man, and I was doing some other job stuff recently too. And it's all use this iPad and have these 8 fucking apps open and put this thing in on this app and do this thing on this app. It's like, just give me a pen and a notebook. I was in sales most of my life, and that's what I did. I had a pen and a paper, and one thing at a time, one conversation at a time. And maybe when I was younger, I could force myself to do a lot of that. And I guess my brain was sharp enough. I could kind of dredge through it enough, but I don't think I'm capable of it. I wouldn't put myself through that type of thing again. It's brutal. People aren't wired. I think kids will be wired a little differently. I think kids born with an iPad in their hand.
Dude, I'm telling you, there's something like genetic going on with that. My 4-year-old, about to
it is
4.5-year-old granddaughter already knows how to basically do everything on. Like the other day, right? So I have an iPhone.
Well, it's an evolution. Their brains are forming with the technology. So when they're my age, it's not going to feel like some foreign, because we were already adults when this stuff came out. Their brains are forming differently than ours.
Yeah, no, and it was just funny, right? Because I'm sitting here and I'm doing some work on my laptop because I usually have my laptop set up in my room, and that's usually where I'll go to write and stuff sometimes because I don't like being stuck in my studio all the time. But I'm sitting there and I'm like jotting something down on my phone real quick, go back to my laptop. I lock my phone. My granddaughter comes in, picks up my phone and starts trying to play with it. And I'm like, I look at her, what are you doing? She's like, I want to get on your phone. And I'm like, well, honey, it's locked. Give me a second. She's like, Papa, look at me. And she just holds the phone up to my face and gets in it and opens up YouTube. And I'm like, you're fucking 4. What the hell?
Yeah. 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 Well, and the actual, when they talk about how brains even work, it's by you form neural pathways in your brain. I mean, from birth until now, you're just forming neural pathways and you're teaching all this stuff where to go. And once that stuff's cemented in, it's cemented in. So you could hand me a smartphone when I'm already 30, right? It's probably around how old I was when I got my first smartphone or older. And it's never going to feel second nature to me.
Oh, you want
just like a golf swing, because I didn't start golfing till I was 20, is never going to feel natural to me the way it does with my friends who started when they were 5, and they ingrained it.
Yeah, I mean,
or learning a language. Look how kids move here from. My best friend moved here from Colombia when he was a kid. Guy didn't even have an accent. His parents still couldn't speak English after 20 years. But the kids, in 2 months, they're fluent. Because their brains are still forming that stuff. So that goes for tech. It goes for everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, and part of it, you're right. Brains operate so much faster when we're younger because they're absorbing so much more information. And it's because
you're still forming the neural pathways. If I moved down to Colombia next week, I could live there 5 years. I wouldn't be fluent in Spanish unless I made a concerted effort. And it would still be difficult for me.
Yeah.
And think about how much that would hurt my brain. And I was like, oh, I have to sit here and study and memorize. I could bring a 5-year-old with me, and him just from walking around, he would be fluent in a year.
A couple of funny little side notes. One, you want to talk about a mental breakdown? Try teaching your 69-year-old father who's had a flip phone up until that time how to use an iPhone when you've only had an Android. He's the reason I have an iPhone now, because I got tired of him coming to me with questions and me not knowing how to answer them without having to go to videos and walk him through them. I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just getting an iPhone. Because then
I'm a Galaxy guy. I had to use that iPad for that job, and every second I'm turning to another guy and I'm going, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? I'm not used to this Apple interface. I have no idea.
But yeah, another little interesting side note, back to the working for Convergys. I actually got drafted for a special project over there because I had just finished my training and they had what they called the broadband department. Well, somebody that I knew worked there who knew that I was into that kind of stuff. They're like, hey, you need to give him this test. So I took an aptitude test. Next thing I know, I was like, and this was, when I was working for the DirecTV project. So I went from being a trainee who was going to have to work from 11 to 11 at night until 7 in the morning, making blah, blah, blah an hour, to getting a 9 to 6 shift Monday through Friday and getting an extra 50 cents. And I'm for taking an aptitude test. So I'm like, well, hell, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. So then I'm going through and they're starting to teach me how they do all their stuff for their tech side. And we worked with internet. We're the ones that, we were designing the whole home project back in the day before anybody knew what it was. Well, part of what we did was teach people how to use Wild Blue Internet. And I actually almost got fired over a phone call until it became policy, because I was on the phone with this 80-year-old man who had gotten internet for Christmas. And I'm trying to walk this 80-year-old man through all these things to set everything up. And I keep hearing this little kid in the background. And after 20 minutes, right? And keep in mind, call center, supposed to be on the phone and off the phone within 11 minutes. 25 minutes into this call, I keep hearing a kid in the background. I'm like, sir, would it offend you if I put the kid on the phone with me for 5 minutes? Because I think we could probably get this fixed. And sure enough, kid's 6 years old on the phone with me, gets grandpa's internet running with my help in 5 minutes. And
it's not even close.
Quality monitored that call, reported it to my supervisor. I had a one-on-one meeting about it, and they were this close to writing me up until my supervisor's boss was like, did he piss anybody off? They're like, no. Did it fix the problem? Yes. Well, we should probably make it policy then. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, if you just took a random 7-year-old off the street and a random 70-year-old, and you said, John, pick one to do a computer thing, I'll take the kid all day.
all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Now, if you have questions about who we fought in World War II and shit, give me the old guy. But yeah, it's a totally different kind of knowledge. It's their brains have formed with it. Yeah, it's second nature to them. It'll never feel that way to us.
All right,
It's all
man.
learned.
We were only supposed to do this for an hour. We've been on for 2 hours and 10 minutes. I should
Debut. There's a debut episode. It's, you got to go a little long.
Oh, no, I don't have an issue with that, but I figure you probably have other things you need to be doing anyway. So
Yeah, I have a really exciting life. I have to get back to 11 o'clock on a Thursday. I got to hit the clubs. You know how it is.
that's the cats hitting the scene music, in case you're wondering.
Is that my club music? Like Leisure Suit Larry?
It's the only song I had loaded on that board, so that's what I went with.
Sounded like the Leisure Suit Larry theme song or something.
It's kind of ambidextrous right now. I'm still actually programming the new board. I'm still figuring out all the things that it can do. But
No, we can end it. I won't keep you longer. This was really great, and I look forward to more of them. We'll get the audio squared away from the jump next time.
Oh yeah, well at least now we know what the issue is. We'll either figure out what's different between your settings between Skype and the other thing, or we'll just use Skype because it still works.
Skype still works on all the platforms, right?
Yeah. I mean, because it's an app. So, and that was actually something that I was kind of worried about at first, because with Restream, there are certain things that don't work the way they do everywhere else. But as long as it's coming from an app form of some kind, they can still hear it all. So if Skype works easier for you, we can definitely do that, because that actually allows me to bring even more people in if I need to. Because you could actually
Sweet. You can take calls.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's something else, because we do actually have a call-in number. But,
Perfect.
all right. So anyway, I know it's been scrolling all night, but just for those that may be listening and not watching the streams, where can they find you, sir?
John Cat79 on Twitter. Not on there much. I mean, I'm not on the other apps much these days, and podcast is on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, all that. John Katz Show. Should be more of those coming up soon. It's been a minute, but I've got 50-something episodes up there.
Nice. All right. Yeah, unfortunately, Jen was traveling tonight, so we will not. I mean, that's kind of why we ran long, because we had room. Hopefully, we'll be back next week. I am not.
Yeah.
I'm well, actually, and then you and I should be back two weeks. So same time. But Jen and I should hopefully be back next week. I'm not doing the afternoon show until Monday. I do still plan on doing America Off the Rails on Sunday, and we do still have Juxtaposition Saturday night at 11. I think.
By the way, 2 weeks from today is Thursday, July 4th, so we might want to move that one to the 3rd or 5th. Or something.
Yeah, we might have to move that one because. Yeah. So I
No one's going to be tuning in on July 4th.
I was just looking at that. We may actually just take the day off on that one. Or when we can always do, we can do a Friday night show and just do it when Aggie. We can do it when Aggie and I are up if you're available.
Sweet.
But yeah, we'll figure it out one way or the other. Because I was just looking. I was like, dude, that's the 4th. Nobody's going to tune in for us on the 4th. They're going to be blowing shit up. You better be blowing shit up. It's fucking America, bro. Anyway, so you can find me on most social media platforms at RowdyRick73. You can find me as a daily contributor. Usually, I'm going to get back to that hopefully tomorrow on Twitchy.com, an occasional contributor to both LoftusParty.com as well as MisfitsPolitics.com. I'm also the executive producer of the Loftus Party podcast, which drops on Tuesday and is available pretty much everywhere. For those of you that may be checking us out for the first time, you can find us at KLRMradio.com. All of our archive shows are there. If you already have a show you like, you can also look it up by title pretty much on every podcast site known to man. We also now stream to X, Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube on a consistent basis. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I hope everybody's enjoyed our inaugural episode. Do apologize for the 20 minutes or so of a bit of a technical issue. I will get that cleaned up in post. So for those of you that missed the beginning of the show, you can always go back and check out most of it. I'll clean up some of the garble and then just run the rest since we ran long anyway. But we are going to get out of here. We'll be back hopefully in about 2 weeks-ish. May wind up doing Friday the 5th. But if we do that, it would wind up having to be later, because Aggie and I are usually on until at least 9 my time, which would be 10 yours. If that's okay, we can make it work. If not, we'll figure something out.
Appreciate you, man. Had a great time, and yeah, looking forward to keeping this thing going.
All right, I figured we'd leave with some mellow stuff. I actually found a piano version of one of the songs you like, so I decided we'd close with that, at least for tonight anyway. All right,
I was just listening to that. I was like, this is a really pretty rondo of the Pixies song, yeah.
Yep. All right, we are going to get out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night. Hopefully, like I said, Jen and I will be back next week. I'll be back with Aggie tomorrow night doing He Said, She Said, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, otherwise known as Aggie Time. Back on Saturday night doing Juxtaposition, and back on Sunday night for America Off the Rails. In case you haven't figured it out yet, my name's Rick. I'm a workaholic, and my last meeting was forever ago. We'll see you guys later.